the Caitlins and the Angels and the Paiges have really helped us have more eyes on our game than ever. The product's always been good, but now we have more eyes. And so more people are interested, more people are realizing how good our product is, and there's more people that want to be involved.
Welcome to another episode of In Case You Missed It with Khristina Williams, your go-to podcast for the latest in women's basketball. Today, I'm joined by Dallas Wings General Manager Curt Miller, and we're going to talk about all things Dallas Wings. We're going to talk about what's ahead for the franchise and obviously the vision for the team's future. Welcome to In Case You Missed It, Curt. Welcome.
Thank you, Khristina. It's been too long. Good to see you.
Look, I'm so happy we finally are able to get you on the show. And I want to start here. You've been in the WNBA for a long time in a lot of different roles, coach, GM, executive. When you look at your first two seasons with the Wings, what stands out to you the most about your time so far and your leadership with the franchise?
Yeah, I think, Christine, for me, after 35 years on the sideline, and obviously, as you mentioned, I'm starting my 12th year in the WNBA. 7 of those years in Connecticut, most as both the dual hat, as both the head coach and the GM. And then took the leap of faith and needed a new challenge, went out to LA as the coach only. So really experienced the WNBA under 2 different GMs in my short tenure there, as the coach only, and now in a new role where I'm the GM only. And so I really appreciated Dallas. When Connecticut gave me the opportunity after the 22 finals, and as I left for the World Cup to explore other opportunities, Dallas treated me really well and came after me hard. Ultimately, I made the decision to go to LA. And so when things didn't quite work out the way we had envisioned in LA, Dallas came back after me in a different role. And so really excited to come on board as their GM and stay in this fantastic league. But for me, what a great time to come into Dallas. Obviously, we were hiring a new coach. There was a lot of uncertainty in free agency. When I got here last year, we knew that there were players forcing their way out. There were players not returning. I knew that all when I accepted the job. And so it quickly became a very, build in some terms, but a young and right away, very early in my tenure, we won the draft lottery. And last year's lottery obviously pointed to Paige. So it really jump started what we think can be an incredible journey ahead for Dallas, an incredible opportunity here in Dallas. We have new facilities coming on board. With Paige, we had a very, very young core, and despite our record, a lot of things were accomplished and established in my first year here. And now we've won the draft lottery again. So, and we've hired a new head coach, for a second time in my short tenure. So really looking forward to year 2, Khristina, as you mentioned.
Yeah, lots of great things that you just said about, your first two seasons with the Wings or your first season with the Wings. And I want to kind of review the 2025 season. You mentioned that this is your second head coach hire with José Fernandez, but when you talk about the decision to hire Chris Clocanis in that first season, what initially drew you to him at that time? And what did the season teach you about the fit and what you want to accomplish in Dallas?
Yeah, that process was very long and thorough. We interviewed, vetted more than 30 coaches from a lot of different silos, from the WNBA silo, from the college coach buckets, and the NBA. And we dabbled a little bit with some international coaches, but ultimately had some really strong candidates as we continued to narrow down. Well documented that Chris had spent 8 years as an assistant for me, and for many of the years was my right hand person, and it was kind of the voice of my defensive, philosophical approaches. And so when you looked at Chris, he was one of the most experienced assistant coaches in the league, in an incredible run where we went to 4 straight semifinals or finals in Connecticut. We had, some of the best, for 6 seasons, we led the league in wins. And he was a major part of that. We had the most all defensive players in that, 6 or 7 year stretch of any team in the league. And so, ultimately, when it came down to the last few candidates, had a lot of ownership buy-in that, Chris was the candidate and knew he was going to slide over 6 inches into his first true role as a head coach, and thought with a young, exciting build coming up in Dallas and going to be drafting Paige, that giving the runway to a young head coach with a young team made all sorts of sense. And I will be remiss, Khristina, to tell you, like, Chris and his staff should be credited, and there'll be imprints for years to come on a lot that they did right behind the scenes. And the players had great exit interviews in terms of what they were taught, and how Chris treated them as people, and their commitment to their mental health, and some of the policies and procedures that we really got to establish. Chris will never get the credit because of the 10-win season that they really did. Like, he did in so many ways an outstanding job. But two things can be true. And one of the
Mm.
things that we found out was, while we were young, the expectations when you have a player like Paige Bueckers, and the expectations that are now on the Dallas Wings, I probably missed and underestimated that a veteran coach was probably needed, and we didn't have necessarily the runway for a young coach with a young team. And so in this coaching search, the premium was, certainly a veteran, established, winning coach that has had sustained success was really important to us. And people, it's out there. Jose was very much down the road with us in the first year of the search, but the timing didn't work out for him to leave South Florida last year. This year we got to the finish line. We had an extensive search, even opened up the bucket even more in the NBA bucket, silo. It continued to have really, really strong candidates, but really excited about Jose and the veteran presence that he brings. And one of the things through the whole process that, I've shared with a lot of people is, this job is hard. And I shared that with a lot of candidates, and we really dive into that. And I must have told Jose and his wife too, this job is hard. Like, if Paige plays on the ball, people are going to want her off the ball. If you play Paige off the ball, people are going to want her on the ball. You get her 15 shots a game, like the last staff did, people are going to want her to take more shots. Like, it's just a really highly scrutinized job. It's a really tough job, and I kept mentioning that to all the candidates, and really Jose embraced that and wanted to thrive through that. The family knows that, hey, if Paige doesn't take as many shots under him or averages less points, we know the scrutiny's coming. But in some of the candidates, Khristina, frankly, I think we're worried about how tough this job is. So really excited about Jose and his upcoming tenure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely going to dive into more about your hiring process with Jose. But sticking with, you mentioned the NBA style, like going into that pool, and that seemed to be a trend this coaching cycle, I guess, in the offseason. WNBA GMs looking towards NBA, college, and even overseas for their coaching pool. What does that say about the state of where the WNBA is right now?
Yeah, I think there's more eyes on our game than ever. There's more interest in our game. I think it's fair to say some of that has to do with the resources that are behind these positions, that we're gaining even more, interest in our league, right or wrong. That's just a fact. And I think people realize I've been in women's basketball for over 35 years, and and been one of those advocates that will yell off the highest mountain that our product is great and we just need more eyes on it. And the Caitlins and the Angels and the Pages have really helped us have more eyes on our game than ever. The product's always been good, but now we have more eyes. And so more people are interested, more people are realizing how good our product is, and there's more people that want to be involved.
Absolutely. And when we look at the coaching cycle, right? in terms of longevity and stability, I mean, you've had that throughout your career. And we sticking with the state of the WNBA right now. What is it going to take for the Wings to establish a culture where, coaches can establish a culture and identity, but also be promised longevity and have room to make mistakes, even in their first year of being a head coach?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important and, maybe sounds hypocritical because we moved. I'll go to my grave going that in a lot of ways, as a coach myself and for so long, in a lot of ways, our decision is not fair on what we, did with the amount of injuries and adversity that this um, team had this year. John Wooden couldn't have, directed that team to, a championship level. So in a lot of ways, it was a short tenure for Chris and his staff, and very much probably unfair. At the same time, I think two things can be true, and that we have an unprecedented free agency upon us. We're in an unprecedented time with now back-to-back number one picks, and it was really important for us to make this change at this time. But it's really important to establish continuity and consistency. One of the things that I feel like I made my name for myself at the collegiate level is in 13 years, the only coaching staff change I ever had is when I left Bowling Green to go to Indiana and my associate head coach took over the Bowling Green program. I did not have a coaching staff change for my first 11 years as a head coach, and that includes Dobos all the way up to the top assistant. And so continuity and consistency and chemistry is so important. And we're trying to find that. That has not been the case, through the years in Dallas with coaches. And we really need to find this runway to allow, Jose to transition into the pro game from the collegiate game. And I can try to help him that way because I did it myself. But giving him, giving him the grace to make some mistakes and really build, what we think can be a championship team here.
And beyond the coaching change, you also made several major roster moves and decisions in that 2025 season. Looking back at the moves involving players like Melissa Smith, Dejanay Carrington, who you had coached in Connecticut and drafted, the decision to waive Tiara McCowan. What were the key factors at the time that made these decisions necessary when you think about the long-term vision for the Wings, and how did you weigh that in the long-term vision as the general manager?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was mentored at really early in my career in the WNBA, and I struggled with this, goes back to my first year coaching in the WNBA. And the GM that hired me was like, sometimes you just have to rip the Band-Aid off. And we were in discussions behind the scenes of trading for Courtney Williams, who was a rookie in Phoenix, and we were potentially moving Kelsey Bone, who was coming off an all-star year and arguably was the Connecticut Sun best player in 2015. And I was really, really struggling. I was really, really struggling with that decision. Courtney's averaging limited minutes, 1 point, and we're going to move an all-star for her. But the GM at the time said, Curt, I just need you to rip the Band-Aid off. And we got to trust that your eyes and your research tells us this is going to be a good move. Maybe one of the best trades, under my tenure that we made. And we moved and moved Kelsey, a veteran that Phoenix needed. And we were building something very young with Jonquel Jones. And, we had Rachel Banham and Morgan Tuck as rookies, along with Courtney, along with Alyssa Thomas and Jazz Thomas and, Sakina Strickland and that good group. And ultimately, became the winningest team for 6 years in the regular season. So, um, the story was sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off. And when we looked for the future going into an unprecedented free agency, were we going to be able to continue to keep Dejanay here? Were we going to be able to, what were we building and how were we building it? And when Vegas approached us about a first round pick, and at the time they were 500. At the time they were 500. And I loved Melissa Smith, and she, was doing some really nice things for us and really, really easy to work with. But I thought it was a win-win. And sometimes trades don't happen in our league because one GM or the other wants to win the trade. Where, like I think the best trades are win-win. Like trading Chelsea Gray for Jonquel Jones, win-win for both LA and Connecticut back in the day. Those are the trades I loved, and I looked at it as a win-win. We were getting another young first-round asset. And they, added Melissa Smith, who certainly contributed to their championship run. So I think win-win for both of us, but not easy decisions. And then the other caveat is I leaned on Paige. I leaned on Paige, and as we were building this, one of the things that she showed incredible maturity about was the desire to talk about, our future. And we would talk about roster construction, we would talk about trades, we're talking about free agency, talking about draft. Partnering with Paige and Enrique and some of your stars have been really important. And through my career, sometimes stars, have trouble separating friendships and trouble separating people that they like, but maybe in the move. So I've had some fun conversations through lots of these moves and lots of moves that weren't made behind the scenes with Paige. Some of these players that are rumored to be on the trading block around the league, and I would go to Paige and be like, "What you think?" And knowing that she would have an opinion. And I was surprised because I know there's connections with her with some people. And she's like, no, don't you dare give up a first round draft pick. Don't you dare. And so when your star player is, telling you don't give up a first round draft pick or acquire more picks or, has great mature conversations as a rookie already, fun deal.
Absolutely. And what you received was younger players, draft capital, and manageable contracts for this unprecedented, 2026 free agency, as you mentioned. And so after moving on from Chris and all of the different decisions you made in terms of roster, you've hired José Fernandez, who spent 25 years at the University of South Florida. And you already talked about why it was the right time to, hire him, being that he was in the pool last year. But what changed? What specifically changed this time around for you to be able to make that hire? And what sticks out to you about his coaching style and how he fits into the vision moving forward for this Dallas Wings franchise?
Yeah, again, I think it was a great search. Some people we wanted to talk to, we couldn't get permission to talk to, which the public sometimes doesn't understand. There's certainly people that, you know, maybe were interested, but, decided to not be involved in our pool. But ultimately, the people that we really narrowed down to, Jose really stuck out with the veterans presence that he brought, the confidence that he had, and the vision that he has for Dallas really stood out. One of the things I think he's very, very innovative offensively, and he's always done a really good job of putting his best players in position to be successful. He gets his best players shots. He gets his best players the ball. And so there is a hierarchy in his style. I thought that, resonated. He plays like a pro style. His ability to coach international, there's no better kind of resume of coaching international players than him. And as our game, continues to continue to grow internationally. We have, a center from Germany. We have a center from China. He opens doors for us to feel comfortable of bringing other internationals into the franchise because, he's had so much success coaching international players. So he's just the real deal. And when you talk to all our players in the exit interviews, one of the things they were looking for was a coach with accountability, and he's not afraid to hold players accountable. So, he's not afraid of tough conversations. And again, Khristina, I will reiterate our job. I think Steph White has a tough job, and then Dallas Wings. I think the Dallas Wings job is as tough as there is, and we needed a coach that was confident and understood that this job is going to have a lot of scrutiny.
At the moment that we're recording this interview, obviously, there's kind of a standstill in the league right now due to the CBA negotiations. So a lot is kind of uncertain for 2026. But how have you been helping to manage Jose's transition, right, from college into the W during this period?
Yeah, certainly can't speak on the CBA, but when we're talking and I'm trying to help him understand the rules around free agency and what could be upcoming if we have cores again, if we have some of the same structure in place of type of free agents and, explaining, like, hey, just because we want to go after that person, they may not even be available because they may be cored if that's still, a part of the system by a team, so just really explaining some of the nuances. Also, to the blue in the face, I love trying to explain to college coaches how different the pro game is and the nuances. And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And Jose, 25-year vet, we come from the same kind of background. And so, and but I keep telling him it's different, and so we have fun conversations about the nuances that are different between pro basketball and college basketball. And I got two terrific assistant GMs and Travis Charles and Jasmine Thomas, and we're working every day kind of modeling out what expansion draft looks like. What does free agency look like? And lo and behold, the last of the three big buckets is the collegiate draft and with the number one pick. So we're working hard over here to try to make some good decisions in all three of those buckets.
As you look towards 2026, what does the team need most in the short term to get back to a winning trajectory? And like, how do you balance that, as you said, with the long-term vision for the Wings? You mentioned the expansion drafts, free agency, player development, and even, the college draft in 26. So what do you see immediately and that you need as a franchise?
Yeah, Christina, first, I think we need health. Like we have to have a little bit of luck and health on our side. I've had 3 straight years, two unprecedented injury-filled seasons in LA, and now my first year in Dallas. So I don't know if I need to go to a sweat lodge. I don't know if I need to be saged, but like we need some health. It doesn't matter. Like we've always said in the WNBA, the best teams don't always win championships. The healthy teams win WNBA championships. So we need a little bit of luck and we need some health. And we need to have some balance within our roster construction. We have, young core that we're going to build with. We're going to have another young pick, outstanding player with the number one pick. But we need to add some free agent veterans to our locker room. And I think one of the things is Paige is a magnet. I think she's going to draw people that want to play with her. I think it's a fun time with new facilities coming on board here soon. It's a fun time to be in Dallas, but we definitely have to infuse our young core roster with more veteran, established talent. We have to raise our talent level, and we got to get a little luck with our health.
Where does Arike Gumbawale fit in those plans as, to my understanding, she's an unrestricted free agent in this offseason?
Yeah, certainly. She's been such a big part, face of the, franchise for so long, shown her loyalty to us. It's just been such a valuable piece. Didn't really, have a real healthy year. She finished as one of the five players with season-ending injury. And so it was always a revolving roster last year. In fact, the most used starting lineup for us last year, 6 games. In a 44 game season, the most used starting lineup on our team was 6 times. So, it's probably a little bit unfair to judge how everybody worked together. But she's been such an integral part of our franchise and has been tremendously loyal to Dallas. And so we look forward to our free agency with her. And I know that she's had a strong desire to stay in Dallas throughout her career, but we're not naive. We know some teams are going to try to come after her.
And another player I wanted to mention that I spoke to Jose earlier this week, but he talked about the excitement around Awak Kuier. And I know she set out last season. So would she also be part of the plans kind of moving forward? What sort of factors influence that decision as you think about, 2026?
A walk is a big, big part of our future. It's taken a couple seasons off to, improve her game, get stronger, get more confident, and she's done that. Anyone that's watching clips of her overseas now on how much her game has grown, and it's the versatility, right? 6'6" athlete, rim protector that we didn't have last year, can guard multiple positions, can switch on the guards. She enjoys playing the three position. So you even experiment with gigantic lineups, because you can move her to the three in certain lineups. You can play her as the five. So her versatility is so valuable. So a walk's a big piece for us, to bring back into the WNBA. And, I think she's really improved over the last two seasons, which she wanted to do. And it's a different time than when she was here last. New staff, a lot new players, a lot of young core players. I know Paige is constantly reaching out to her, and so she has a bright future, and we'd love to get her back in 26 in the WNBA.
Yeah, lots of excitement about around an international players, as you said, in terms of globalizing the game. And she's probably one of the athletes that kind of embodies that excitement in terms of the international players and the W. But obviously, lots of good luck in your first two seasons because you all have the number one pick going into 2026, back-to-back number one picks. I'm curious as you think about, the future for this team, as you're going on these college evaluation days, what are some of the things that you're seeing at the college level in terms of the student athletes that you've been able to evaluate that you feel will be a right fit for Dallas when you start to think about some of those players that could potentially be part of the franchise?
Yeah, I think the draft is strong. I think it has unique variety. When you look at the potential lottery picks in this draft, it runs the gamut from point guards to centers and everything in between. And you have a little bit of everything. You have point guards, you have post players, you have great shooter, you have great player in transition. Like you just have a variety of players that are competing for those lottery picks. So it's fun. It makes our job maybe not a consensus number one, like Caitlin and Paige back to back years. Maybe not a consensus number one, but a draft class that has a lot of versatility and variety per position. So we're having fun evaluating it. My DMs are certainly have fun getting all the opinions from everybody, but all part of it. So, it's going to be exciting as we, slowly approach March Madness and, continue to keep evaluating for this draft, but excited about the players that are potentially lottery picks.
You know what's so interesting? Every year, there's conversation about the strongest position group in each and every draft. And you mentioned the versatility of the potential 2026 class. What do you see? What do you see from a general manager's and a coach's perspective? What are you seeing specifically from, this crop or this group of athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the game is as deep as it's ever been, and there's talent everywhere. There's talent in outside of the Power Four conferences. There's the versatility in this class, as we mentioned, with a lot of different positions, and I think it's a good international class. And so, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time, in women's basketball, and our game just continues to get better and better. And this class will contribute to the continued growth of the WNBA.
There's also been discussion about a potential draft combine. What are your thoughts about potentially adding that back into the fold of the W? I know it's not a for sure thing, but it's definitely in the conversations this off season.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about specific CBA things. That's probably going to be a thing that potentially lands in the CBA, so we can't discuss it. But in theory, anything that helps us prepare for drafts is a good thing.
All right, sticking with Paige, you already mentioned, just how you want to build this franchise to bring out her best. But in her second year, what growth do you expect to see from her?
Yeah, I think through the injuries, her leadership was even accelerated. We know she's a great leader. She's a unifier. She brings teams together. She truly lives, like it's not about her. It's, about everybody else. And, like that's not social media. Like, I mean, that's how she is. Like it's all about others. So I look for that continued leadership to just continue to grow. I think her versatility on being able to play with the ball in her hands and play off the ball is just really, really special. And allowing a coach to really play with different type of lineups and different type of personnel around her. And so I think you're going to see her get stronger. I think you're going to see, knock on wood, she has a great unrivaled season, but she's going to be rested. I mean, the mental toll that, how much that national championship meant to her in that run in UConn, and then turn around and the emotions about being drafted number one and then trying to lead a franchise, a young franchise that was unfortunately really hit with injuries. Um, it was a lot, not only physically for her in the run from Connecticut right into a WNBA season, but mentally. So I'm excited for her growth just because I think I anticipate her coming into the second year of her career much more rested and in a really good headspace.
Last one before we let you get out of here. When fans think about the future of the Dallas Wings, what do you want them to know about the direction you're heading toward?
Yeah, I think exciting with generational players and a franchise that is going to have a lot of grit and determination with the coach that we've hired, but also a team that really, really is connected with its fan base and a team that can be really special to follow. We take great pride that we were the second highest drawing team on the road. The Dallas Wings roster and the youth and the players that, have gravitated right now to Dallas are really followed around this, country. And we take a lot of pride for not a great record team last year to be the second highest drawing team when we went on the road just shows you the following. The Dallas Wings are just beginning to scratch the surface. So an exciting, young, gritty, I think really, really talented team is going to be part of the makeup going into next year.
Certainly. Well, I want to thank you so much, Curt, for joining us this week on In Case You Missed It. Certainly lots to look forward to for the Dallas Wings ahead of the 2026 season. And I know fans are excited to see who you all will draft at that number one pick. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Khristina. Always great to be with you.